on April the 24th, 1990, in a world run by vampires.
So we were just walking, and all of a sudden when I held up the mirror, a bright light came out of nowhere and she just vanished. She wasn't wearing her sunblock that day.
There was nothing much to be found here. There was no perpetrator involved. This was more of a tragedy than a murder. This is the cause of death. It is round, flat, and shiny. We are sending it to the lab on further investigation for how this accident happened and how it can be avoided.
We discovered that light may have came from outside the window. Somehow, the light rays may have seeped through the boards covering the window, reflected off the mirror, and onto the victim. So, how does reflection work?
In order to understand reflection, we must be able to understand the nature of light. Light is created at its source, and the direction that it travels from its source can be described as a straight line. The nature in which that light travels can be described as a wave. Light travels through the shortest path possible from point A to point B. This was first observed by Greek mathematician Yuan of Alexandria in the year 60. In 1657, Pierre de Fermat, a French lawyer interested in mathematics, used the observations of Yuan of Alexandria to predict the path that light would take after reflection from a surface or when passing through a new medium. In doing so, he created the Fermat's principle.
Using a technique called ray tracing, where the path of the ray is calculated by considering the velocity, absorption characteristics, reflective properties, and the Fermat's principle, we were able to determine the source of the ray as the sun. Sunlight is also composed of ultraviolet radiation, which is an electromagnetic wave with a slightly shorter wavelength than visible light, and is extremely lethal. Now that we understand the nature of light, reflection is described as a change in direction of a light ray when it bounces off a surface. We are going to use a ray diagram to illustrate the laws of reflection. First, on the reflecting surface, there's an imaginary perpendicular line called the normal. The ray pointing to the reflective surface of light is called the incident ray, and the angle of incidence is the angle at which a beam of light hits the surface. After bouncing off the reflective surface, the ray is now called the reflective ray. We can predict its angle, which is called the angle of reflection, as it is the same angle as the incident ray.
Using this information, we deduce that the sunlight somehow seeped through a crack on the wall and reflected off the mirror on the ground. The reflective ray then traveled towards the victim, and the ultraviolet rays within the sunlight killed her. The victim was a vampire, which is why upon contact with the ultraviolet rays, she disappeared into thin air. This is because, unlike humans, vampires do not have melanin, which protects the human body from radiation and also gives them pigment. For bacteria, however, it takes around 5 minutes for the ultraviolet rays to severely damage or kill it. So what are ultraviolet rays? They're invisible to the human eye but can be seen by certain animals such as bees. They have a longer wavelength than the visible light spectrum and therefore lie between visible light rays and X-rays. For humans, ultraviolet rays do leave a negative impact, but to a lesser extent. As you may already know, ultraviolet rays cause sunburn. This is because skin cells get damaged as the melanin absorbs the radiation. Blood then flows to the damaged area in an attempt to repair it, which is why the skin becomes red.
So how can you avoid reflection? You can. Reflection can be found everywhere, from solar panels to buildings to video projectors, reflective tape, and even on vehicles. They can also be used as decoration. Total internal reflection is used to cut diamonds and used in fiber optic cables. Reflection can also be found in nature, such as on the surface of water or even on the moon itself. Reflection is unavoidable.